Teams, work teams, sports teams, family, and friends. When you think about a team, I wonder what comes to mind. Most of us, I imagine, would think of a group made of like-minded people who perhaps see things the same way and have common passions and goals in life. Today, we're looking at when Jesus calls his first disciples. And to be honest, if it were up to me, I'm not sure I would put these people in the same room together, let alone the same team. If you haven't already, pause the video and check out Luke chapter 5 verses 1 to 11, verses 27 to 32, and Luke chapter 6, 12 to 16. There are a number of other accounts throughout the Gospels relating to the calling of the first disciples, but for today we'll stick with these. Most people, when they think about the calling of Jesus' disciples, will probably think of 12 men who would spend most of their time following Jesus around for the next 3 years of his life, learning from him and witnessing what he did. But actually in the Bible it's pretty clear that Jesus had many more disciples than just the 12. Later on in Luke's Gospel there's a record of Jesus sending 72 of his disciples out. And in John's Gospel there's a record of a large proportion of Jesus' disciples choosing to turn their back on him. They found his teaching too radical and hard to take. A lot of the time we can also think of Jesus calling his disciples as Jesus calling a number of individuals to come and follow him. And that's true, but I think if we stop there, we miss a much greater reality of what's going on. Jesus, yes, called people to follow him individually, but I believe Jesus called people to follow him as a group, as a community, as a church. Most people think of the church beginning when Jesus left at the end of the Gospels and the Holy Spirit came at the start of Acts. But I disagree. If church is a group of people who choose to follow Jesus, choose to be inspired by his teaching, and choose to be in relationship with him and allow that relationship to transform their lives from the inside out, then I say that is what the group of disciples were who followed him. And when we consider this, and we consider the type of people that Jesus chose to follow him, the first disciples, then I think we see something extraordinary from this Jesus. Just take a moment to consider some of the people that Jesus called in this group. Take Simon Peter and Andrew, simple fishermen who would have known little in the way of formal education and the building of a kingdom. Simon Peter, who would walk on water and declare Jesus as the Messiah, in the next breath would chastise Jesus for talking about his death, and also denied him 3 times. What about James and John, brothers who gained the title Sons of Thunder, not because they were powerful, but because they bickered and argued and had short tempers? How about Thomas, who asked some amazingly insightful questions, and yet doubted? Simon the Zealot. Now he's an interesting one. The Zealots were a political movement which sought to incite the Jews to rebel against the Roman Empire and expel it from the Holy Land by force of arms. Not the kind of person you might find in a church today. Judas, who cared so much about the money pot and who would go on to betray Jesus. But my favourite is Matthew, the tax collector, the turncoat, the spy, informant, the one who worked for the Romans and in so doing was deemed an outcast from the Jewish society. Rich, but not at all liked. These are just some of the 12 that Jesus chose to make his first church. I mean, can you imagine a meal with these guys coming together? Can you imagine Simon the Zealot sitting next to Matthew the tax collector? Do you think that as soon as Jesus called them, they were mates and enjoyed hanging out together? I think not. Hopefully you can now see what an extraordinary thing it was for these men to come together. This was church, a church put together by Christ himself, made up of men who came from incredibly different and diverse backgrounds. So what, you might be thinking? Well, as I've gone on in my Christian life, and as I've spent more time in church communities, I found myself plagued with a question that has come up again and again. Why can't Christians just agree? Why is there so much disunity between churches and within churches? Why is it that Christians often disagree about more things than they choose to agree about? There is a natural concern and frustration that comes when we look at church and we hold it up against a false image of what we imagine church to have been like when it began. Namely, a group of mates who loved hanging out together in perfect relationship with each other and with Jesus. This is a false image. As I've read the accounts of Jesus calling the first disciples, I've begun to see this wonderful and true image of Jesus' first church. People called by name, by him, and they were divided by their worldviews and experiences. The first disciples were not the best of mates to begin with. They disagreed. They argued about who was going to be the greatest. They worried about storms and food. They said stupid things and so much more. Yet they came together. Why? What was it that they had in common? Jesus. Jesus was the glue that bound them together on this incredible journey. And over the course of years through which they saw Jesus die and rise again and ascend to heaven, they moved from being enemies and strangers with one another to becoming family as they continued to journey with Jesus for the rest of their lives. Maybe like me, sometimes you have questions about the unity or disunity seen in churches and amongst Christians. Maybe sometimes you feel disillusioned by that, and sometimes confused about the eclectic mix of people we find in church today. What do some churches today have in common? What do some of the people within those churches have in common with one another? Sometimes not very much. Sometimes only Jesus. And you know, that's more than enough to start the journey. I take great comfort and hope from the story of Jesus calling 12 men to follow him. People who were not naturally going to be friends. But through them, he brought about unity and relationship and family as they journeyed with him and with one another. And you know, Jesus is still doing that today, with me and with you. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video this week. If you enjoy the content that we're uploading, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and then you'll be informed of any new content that we upload in the future. See you next time.